Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lord Kalisha Kale. Welcome to the Time Debates.
Imagine a world where technology would help us to learn from our forefathers and foremothers. What would we do with it? Picture, if you will, a time center that allows us to draw upon our ancestors' wisdom in order to enhance our understanding of some of the decisions that they made. With this time vortex, a spiraling gateway that opens up a corridor to the past in order to bring to your watching eyes the Time Debates.
Good day, brothers and sisters. I'm your host, Lord Kalisha Kale, and I would like to welcome you to another episode of the Chocolate Rain Time Debates. I would like to introduce our two debaters. First, from North Carolina, ex-slave and ex-slave master, Mr. Anthony Johnson. Next, we would like to introduce from the great state of Arkansas, former U.S. Marshal and black superhero, U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves. Gentlemen, welcome to this week's Times Debate. The topic of this debate will be disloyalty to the race, and which man set the best example for our people today. Mr. Johnson, you have 1 minute to open.
Thank you, sir, for inviting me to today's debate. Mr. Shakale, during the introduction, you called me a house nigger. Nothing, sir, could be further from the truth. I worked in the field for Pecker Woods in this nation for 7 years. I don't even know what it means to be in the master's house. I didn't like those white folks, and those white folks didn't like me, so I resent being called a house nigger. And by the end of these here debates, you'll come to a better understanding of the plight of black folk in the 1600s in this country. I did what I had to do to protect my family. Any other explanation of my actions is insulting. I imagine that I was chosen as the house nigger because I own black folk. What do you think those niggers would have preferred to be? On my farm, on the white man's plantation. I was good to them niggers. And I resent being labeled as anything other than that by you niggers. Thank you.
Mr. Reeves, you may open, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Shaquille. You're going to have to explain that Lord thing to me before I leave these debates, too. Folks, let me start by saying this. In your introduction, Mr. Shaquille, you referred to me as a superhero. I was not that. I was a farmer, a businessman, and a U.S. Marshal. I took an oath to protect this nation from scoundrels throughout the Wild Wild West. Also, while traveling through the time vortex, I heard comments saying that I was the first black marshal in this nation. Sir, that was neither true. I just want to set the record straight today. I was one of the first black U.S. Marshals west of the Mississippi, but I worked in conjunction with other outstanding black U.S. Marshals. Now I see that I've been brought here to discuss our legacies and which one set the best example for the modern day black man. I would hope that by the end of these here debates, our people will stand on the side of law and order and reject anyone, black or white, who would see fit to owning another human being. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, let's get into this. My first question, why would anyone become a slave owner and have the ramifications of owning slaves been detrimental to the human psyche? Mr. Johnson, if you please.
Well, I'm probably one of the best people in history to understand the question because I was once an indentured servant. And yes, I did become a slave owner. While serving as an indentured servant, I worked hard to make the impression that I was better than the menial tasks given to me. I also worked hard to save money so that when the opportunity came, I was able to buy land for me and my wife. In other words, I figured out that human bondage was the #1 commodity in America, and that I would follow the social norms of my day to enrich myself and my family. The fact that some of my servants were black is irrelevant. This nation celebrates landowners. So why would I walk into a game stacked against me and refuse to play by the rules? I was a good owner. I wasn't a harsh master. I just chose to become a master because it was the best way to secure comfort for me and my family. Thank you.
I now understand why they call you a house nigga. What kind of man would want to own slaves? Better yet, what kind of black man would want to enslave his own people? You, sir, are indeed a house nigga.
That's rich, coming from an outlaw. At least I followed the rules. You, sir, attacked your own master and ran away like a damn coward. Then you started arresting black men for the white coat system. You tell me, who's the real house nigga, nigga?
Mr. Reeves, it's your turn to address the question.
To answer your question, sir, why would anyone want to own slaves is beyond me. I can't intelligently tell you why one man would think that he should own another. I saw much of it in my youth. When the Civil War broke out, so did I. I did, in fact, whip my master's ass. Oh, yeah. I kicked his ass all over that damn plantation. And I did so because he wasn't prepared to entertain my way of thinking. I was ready to fight and die for the Union Army and to free black folk all across this nation, unlike Mr. Johnson, who dove headfirst into owning and victimizing his own people. Now, as for the psychological ramifications of owning slaves, I would have to say that they are as mentally deteriorating to the owner as they are physically detrimental to the slave. One can't possibly think that their mind is operating at the peak of its intellectual capacity when they can own and harm another individual that doesn't want to be property. Something is wrong with the slave master because he has convinced himself that he is superior. Excuse me. Slavery is the worst and greatest evil in the history of the world. Slave traders and slave owners are the scum of the earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Our next question will be about a legal decision made in your day. Mr. Johnson, you took former servant John Kaser to court because he left your farm after his servitude had expired. But you did not take the 4 white men to court after their time had expired. Why would a black man fight to keep his brother in servitude while letting the white boys go?
As I said earlier, I didn't create the social norms of the 1600s. I only fought for my place in this world, and I played by the rules. That nigga over there is another thing completely. The case you've referenced, sir, was in 1655, and my black slave, John Kaser, did leave my plantation without my permission. You must understand that this was Virginia, and in 1640, the Virginia courts had ruled that John Punch, a Negro servant, didn't have the same rights as white servants. Now, I didn't make that decision, but the courts in Virginia had clearly decided 15 years before my dispute with John Kaiser that blacks in servitude no longer had inalienable rights. Now, basically, John belonged to me just like my horse, my dog, or my plow. That nigga was my property. And as the youth of today would say, that's my nigga. Thank you.
You know, I killed 14 men in my day. And I arrested 3,000. And I do believe it would have been easier to shoot you in the head, Mr. Johnson, than to shoot any cattle rustling, side-winding, horse thief, or bushwhacking son of a bitch in the Badlands. You, sir, are a damn heathen.
Mr. Reeves, you came along 200 years after me. You got to fight in the Civil War. Maybe I would have fought in the Civil War. I just didn't have the liberty, sir.
No. You chose to make yourself rich off of slave labor and the sweat of your brothers. Mr. Johnson, you are a monster.
Okay, gentlemen. Let's get back to the debate. Mr. Reeves, would you like to comment on the case between John Kaiser and Mr. Johnson here?
Mr. Johnson wasn't the only blackface sellout. There were black slave owners up and down the East Coast. Men who victimized their own people for personal wealth. Mr. Johnson here is the first on record to do it, and probably the most selfish, because he understands servitude and working for others. He mentioned in his opening comments that he didn't want to be labeled a house nigger because of his hatred. Now we see it wasn't the white man that he hated, but the evil ways that he adopted while in service to that slave-owning Peckerwood. As much as I despise Mr. Johnson here, paving the way, there were black slave owners far worse than him. April Ellison of Sumter County, South Carolina. He was a black slave owner who had as many as 65 slaves. And he was so white that he changed his name from April to William Ellison Jr. after the white man that fathered and owned him. He helped fund the Civil War and is spoken of in many slave circles as the greediest and meanest slave owner in South Carolina. He is the perfect example of diminished mental and emotional capacity. Slavery took all of what was once April the slave and created the monster, William, the slave owner. I can't think of a worse black man in history.
I'm nothing like William Ellison. I didn't mistreat my slaves. As a matter of fact, John Kaiser himself went on to become a successful landowner. It's easy to judge me from the knowledge gained by living in a more enlightened age. Your hatred for my action makes it more difficult for you to appreciate the success I made in my time. I'm a black man who won in America's courts in the 1600s. The radical ass niggas of the day are losing court cases in record numbers. They're dupes for the white elite and political pushovers with no real power. Maybe if they played by the rules as I did in my day, they would have better outcomes.
Play by the rules. Did he just say play by the rules? Sir, you spent your entire life on your knees sucking on the white man's kneecaps. How could you know what the rules were with all that yes or bossing you were doing? You are the stereotypical house nigga. Brain dead and too foolish to acknowledge it.
Mr. Reeves, you're nothing more than a social parasite, reliving history through cracked glasses. I own more land in the height of slavery than you and 99% of the brain-dead niggas judging me today. I'm the American dream, sir. What you should do is take that pistol and turn it on yourself.
Oh, okay, folks. Let's say that for the closing. I do appreciate this debate, and I'm certain that for our viewers it has been quite educational to discover that there were blacks who participated in the slave system, and that there were black men, such as Bass Reeves, who served the law as U.S. Marshal back in the 1800s. Now, you will each have 1 minute to close. Please explain to us what you believe your legacy is, and what we can learn from the actions you took while alive. Mr. Johnson, you have the mic.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to walk through the time portal and address some of my actions. It's true that I'm a former owner of slaves. It's also true that I went to court to certify myself as a slave owner. I also won a case against my former slave, John Kaser, to validate my certification. I can see how, through your eyes, it's unfathomable for blacks to own other blacks. This is not a new reality. Some of the first conquerors on this planet were from black nations. I'm just a black man who owned slaves in America. So it seems more diabolical to you because you're Americans. This was the way I was taught. I do believe I had a measure of decorum with those who were servants of mine, and that John and others who labored under my ownership could have done far worse. Is slavery a blot on the human experience? I'd have to say yes. However, living in the antebellum South, I realized that those who owned property and chattel enjoyed rights that others did not. I wasn't about to walk out of bondage just to become a second-class citizen. So label me as you will, sellout, house nigga, Uncle Tom, whatever. I would much rather endure those labels and be in a position of ownership in the 1600s than to be considered a man with high integrity, good morals, and solid Christian values, because those niggas didn't own shit. This was the world I lived in, and the rules established for me, and if nothing else, I became successful because I mastered all the rules. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Reeves, your closing, please.
My. That is a lot to unpack. I want to take Mr. Johnson's closing statement and attempt to make some sense out of it. He first said that he didn't want to walk out of servitude into second-class citizenship, so he learned to navigate the troubled waters of slavery, thereby elevating himself to become a proud owner of black slaves. How lost do you have to be, sir? You hated slavery when you were a servant. Now, why do you think John Kaser left you and your property when his time was up? He hated you as much as he hated the white man. Now, you said you would rather own property than to be a man of high integrity. Well, that's just a damn shame, sir. My job was to track down men and to bring them back to justice. I brought over 3,000 of them back. I was shot more times than I could count, and I returned fire, killing 14. I too made it out of the bowels of slavery, but I chose to fight for those trapped in the disgusting South and to track down enemies of the state. I truly do love America because it was my people and yours, Mr. Johnson, that built this motherfucker from the ground up. I want every black man, woman, and child to experience the freedom that you and I had. Freedom that I cherished and that you stole. This nation is going through civil unrest and a revamping of social privileges. They should look at the two lives that you and I lived and choose the life that I lived. The life of one who fought for the growth of this nation and for all of its citizens. They should reject all those in history like you, selfish, arrogant, ignorant, petty, and ungodly. You, Mr. Johnson, are among the worst that America's double standard has created. You are unworthy of this debate, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Gentlemen, that was an inspiring and educational debate. I am sure that there have been many in our community to find it almost unbelievable that we had a black man own black people in this country, and that we also had a black marshal who arrested blacks and whites in this country. It just goes to show that you cannot build this country without teaching about the legacy of our people. Whether it be good or bad, we are woven into the fabric of American society. Thank you for watching these time debates. I'm Lord Khalif Shaquille, and we are Chocolate Rain. And we do what we want.
God.
All right.
Pretty good.